Hi, my name is Rickard Anderkrans. I'm a healthcare research analyst here at ABG Sundal Collier. Today I have the pleasure to introduce Gisli Hennemark, the CEO of Surgical Science. So without further ado, I will hand the word over to you, Gisli. So the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Rickard, and thank you for inviting us to be part of ABG's Investor Days here. My name is Gisli Hennemark. I'm the CEO of Surgical Science, and I'm here in the Kista office. So it's gray morning here. I don't know wherever you guys are that are listening, but I'm going to run through a quick overview of the company, and then there will be some time at the end for questions. So we can jump into the presentation, Rickard. And there I see the new slide. So Surgical Science vision is that everyone on their way into the operating room should know that the surgeon has been trained and objectively certified in a safe simulated environment. So what we do is virtual reality training of technical skills. So if you see the surgeon there on the right-hand side, the work that that surgeon is performing is technically very challenging. You're operating keyhole surgery, which is one of our specialties, laparoscopy. You're operating while you're looking up at a 2D screen, and you're having instruments that go into the body of the patient in different angles, and you're working in a volume, but you're looking at 2D. So what you really need to have control of is hand-eye coordination, sense of depth, psychomotor skills, and your muscle memory in your hands. And all this can be practiced in a safe simulator environment. So it's just as when you step on an airplane, you know that the pilot has trained tricky situations in a simulator, but it's not at all the case if you're unfortunate enough to be rolled into the OR. It can differ greatly between hospital to hospital and country to country, etc. So there is still a lot of standards lacking, but they are coming. And we've actually been working with this for more than 20 years. So Surgical Science has for a long time been a research company, was based in Gothenburg, founded in Gothenburg by a few software developers and a surgeon. So for a long time, we've been working on research to get a technical solution for this. So next slide. If we then fast forward 20 years, we are today a business of two different areas. We have a business area we call educational products. Those are that is the business area where we develop, sell, and distribute simulators under our own brand. So we work primarily with university hospitals that are using simulation to a large degree for their residents. So these are surgeons that are in training, about to start their clinical career. We do this primarily through distributors, and it's under our own brand name. Lately, and I'm talking in the last 3-4 years, we have seen an increased interest from med device companies who have started realizing the business potential in using simulation. So in this business area, we work directly with the med device companies, and we use our technology, primarily software, to embed that onto the med device companies' hardware platforms. Surgical robotics is the biggest area here. And we always do this white label. So we do this sort of an Intel Inside strategy, where our solution is a component in the med device company's platform. And next slide. These two business areas really feed off one another, because in educational products, we get access to key opinion leaders, and we learn a lot about the educational processes. And we also have customers that use our products to do scientific work, which results in validation studies of the simulation software. And all that knowledge and credibility is something that the med device companies are craving, and makes them want to work with us and use our validated software. These two different business areas in terms of revenue streams are a bit different. In educational products, there is a big one-off sale when we sell a simulator with different software components. There is some add-on sales in terms of new, you can call it games almost, so new procedures, so new software pieces. And there is some recurring revenue in update agreements and service agreements. On the industry OEM side, we have initially some consulting revenue to adapt and embed our software onto the platform. And then we enter usually into a phase where we don't have so much revenue. And then once products are launched, then we get license revenue that tends to be very long revenue streams, because there is very high stickiness once you have used our software to validate your products. Perhaps you have used the data to regulatory authorities, and your customers have also started using the curriculums of the software that you have. So we can jump forward to the next slide. Just a quick look at the educational products, what they look like, the hardware platforms. So we work then in laparoscopy, which is our largest product, our flagship product to the left. We work with endoscopy, which is colonoscopy, gastroenterology, and bronchoscopy. So it's basically the same principle. When you use an endoscope to do an examination of the colon, it's a lot of technical skills to maneuver the endoscope. We also have a couple of other products that with their specialities. One called Symbol Box, where you use your real laparoscopic instruments but get the objective feedback. We have a team training application, and we have a scaled down version of LapSim. All these products are our own IP, but we have outside contract equipment manufacturers to do the actual production. None of the products are med devices in a regulatory sense. They're all educational products. And we tend to keep these platforms for a long time. So if we jump to the next slide, but where we do the major investment in R&D is on the software side. So we keep on with faster graphic cards. We keep on perfecting the simulation, and you can do more and more realistic simulation the more processing power you have. We also add new indications or procedures, part of the body, and types of surgeries you can do. So it's almost like a sort of PlayStation game kind of model. You have the platform, and then you can make add-on sales to different target groups at the hospitals. So today, you know, general surgeons, urologists, gynecologists, thoracic surgeons, they can all use different software packages to do their specific training. So right now, for example, we are developing a colorectal surgery module for LapSim. And if we then jump to the next slide, here in the best of worlds, if technology were on my side, I would have played a video for you. But, oh, well, we do have a video. That's great. Okay, look at this video. This is the core asset of Surgical Science. For 20 years, we have done a platform, a physics engine, where we can simulate real-time non-linear interaction between tissue, organ, and instrument in a realistic way. So what we're looking at here is a gallbladder, the surgical removal of a gallbladder, called a cystectomy. And it's really this that has taken us a long time to develop, and that's been very validated. It's how you can work and perfect your skills in an objective manner in a simulated environment. So when you're standing as a trainee. You're standing in front of the simulator, you're holding on to instruments, you're even getting tactile feedback. So when you punch into the liver bed, it will be hard, and you get objective feedback on exactly what you've been doing right and wrong, etc. So it's this asset, this software asset that we keep on reusing and perfecting in all of our projects. And this is built in C++. So this is not built with any third-party software engines, etc. It's a custom solution that we have developed, and we always sort of among ourselves argue that how can we get more return on this asset, and that's where we keep on working more and more with the med device companies. So next slide. A couple of macro trends here that are interesting, that perhaps were not on the mind of the founders of Surgical Science 20 years ago when they talked about virtual reality simulation. And people couldn't even Google it because there was no Google at the time. But what we're seeing today that really affects our business is number one, there is an increased focus on patient safety. All regulatory authorities, governmental bodies are stressing the importance of patient safety. Number two, there is a big shift from open surgery to minimum invasive surgery. And that's both laparoscopy, when you're holding onto your instruments, and robotic assisted surgery. And this is natural because as economies develop, you want to have surgeries where the patient can go home the same day, where the patient doesn't risk infections and blood loss. And so it's both a matter of patient well-being and also an economic factor. And number three, we see an increased digitalization of healthcare. And this means that the new instruments that are coming out from the med device companies increasingly have digital interfaces. And that makes our asset all of a sudden very valuable because we can implement a pure software solution to our med device customers. So adding our software onto existing hardware. Another effect of digitalization is also a lot of data. We're getting a lot of data, and that data all of a sudden puts the spotlight on patient safety because everyone have known that there is a big difference depending on the technical skills of the surgeon in the expected outcome. Everyone has known this. You can ask a surgeon friend if you have one. Everyone knows this. It's like an unspoken truth or spoken truth. But now you have data backing it up, and that puts even further pressure on patient safety. So I'd be very surprised if in a number of years, if this is not mandatory to do simulation before you start working on real life patients. So next slide. Let's move into what we do for our med device customers. Our largest niche or sub-segment is robotic assisted surgery. And for those of you who are new to this area, it's actually not a robot by itself operating on the patient, but it's a surgeon that sits in a console manipulating robotic arms. And this provides great benefit to the surgeon because all of a sudden you can have added software features to the console and you can sit in a comfortable position. So the surgeons really want this. For the patient, it's better outcomes. And that's why, if we jump to the next slide, that's why initially the growth was really strong in urology, because if you're a man and you're diagnosed with prostatic cancer, you do some Googling and you realize you want to have a surgery done by the Da Vinci robot rather than alternative approaches. But we have seen tremendous growth in the last few years, first in gynecology and then in general surgery, which is a much, much bigger segment. So, and these are numbers here in procedures being conducted by robotic assisted surgery from the market leader Intuitive Surgical. That is a customer of us. I mean, they run our simulation on their surgical platform. So if we jump to the next slide, here's a couple of examples, because what is happening then in the robotic surgery space is you have one market leader that's been very strong and has been pioneering this new technology, and that's Intuitive Surgical. But as patent has started to run out, you now see a lot of new entrants into robotic surgery. To the left-hand side, we see a product from a company called CMR Surgical. It's a European startup. You should look them up if you're not familiar with them, CMR Surgical. They had the largest ever financing of a privately held med device company in Europe ever, so largest private placement ever. And they have a product that they just launched this year called Versius. And they have disclosed that customers such as NHS in England and etc. have started using their technology. With every one of their robots comes something they call the Versius Trainer to ensure patient safety and to ensure that their technology can be adapted. And Versius Trainer is 100% surgical science. So it's an example of the under the hood strategy. So we want to work with as many of these surgical robotic companies as possible and implement our software technology. If you look at the penetration of robotic assisted surgery, it is today around 2% of the surgeries you can do with today's technology that are being done with today's technology. Everyone, if you look at independent research reports, predicts an aggressive growth in this area, as new entrants such as Medtronic, J&J are all coming into this space with their own platforms. And at the end of the day, it's of course the instrument sales for these huge companies that are very important. So they need to gain market access. And in order to do so, they need to demonstrate to regulatory authorities that they have a patient-safe way to introduce the technology, and they have an incentive to transition as many surgeons as possible onto their platform. And that's where simulation becomes a key role. We announced about 2 months ago that we entered into a framework with Auris Health, a framework agreement, where we are their supplier for their future robotic system of simulation. And Auris Health was acquired by J&J for about $5 billion, including earnout payments. So it puts a little bit the scale of the future expectations in this space. So next slide. Just quickly, surgical robotics is the most important niche, but other parts of med devices are also increasingly adapting digitalization and CPUs. Here's an example of a vessel sealer from a large med device company, and that actually contains, CPU power, so you can measure the thickness of the tissue you're about to seal. As it has this digital interface, we can adapt that directly on to existing products. So you see to the left-hand side, you see a surgeon at a congress trying this new device out. And this is a great model for us. I mean, we get paid to implement new tools onto our educational products, which increases the value of our educational products. And the med device company is buying simulators from us and using them in a way that drives the educational business. All of a sudden, we get to be, in the best location of the Congress. So, gonna wrap up here with a couple of slides on our numbers. Of course, the COVID times has affected us like everyone else. I mean, we are a top-line company in terms of our primary objective is to grow revenues. In a quarter like Q3, where COVID was severely impacting the business, we decreased 23% year-over-year. That has a lot to do also with surgical robotic companies are selling less new robots, which gives us less software license revenue. But it also affects when you cannot visit customers at hospitals and promote your educational products. But despite this, we are still a very profitable company. Our EBIT was 7.3 million Swedish crowns. So it's about 30% EBIT margin. And if you look at it from an EBITDA level, we were at 46% and we grew our cash position. So we feel, despite the difficult times, we feel we're in a strong position. Next one. We do have financial goals, and we are aiming at being a 400 million Swedish crowns company in 2024. We have said this figure may include some complementary acquisitions. And in order to reach that, we see educational products, our own simulators, growing on average 15% per year. And industry OEM, as I explained with the business model, has a bit more uneven growth because initially we have some consulting revenue, but then the big upside is when license revenue starts kicking in. We have an EBITDA margin goal of 40%, and already at this level we have been beating that. And then final slide, if we take a look at Surgical Science share, we have been at Nasdaq First North Growth Market since June 2017. We have about 2,700 shareholders. The two largest shareholders have been with the company for more than 15 years. They did not sell anything at the IPO. They're both active on the board. And then we have the third largest shareholder as a result of an acquisition we made. I don't know if I lost you there momentarily, but I think actually my 20 minutes are up. So I don't know if that was intentional, but hopefully I'm back on.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Thank you for that. We'll proceed to a brief Q&A session. So can you talk a bit about clinical validation and why that is an important part of your business model? Obviously, looking in the longer term, it would be highly interesting to hear more about the potential within the regulatory requirements for surgeons to be certified and these types of developments. So it'd be interesting to hear a bit of how you're working with that and that part of the business.
Yeah, no, clinical validations are really important to us, and it's also important to stress that we as a company are never involved in them. It's our customers that are using our products because they are the superior products to do their clinical research. So, for example, a major study that was published some years ago in British Medical Journal was a Danish team that did a big study where one group of residents had simulation as part of the curriculum. And they have also, they operate on pigs, they have some box trainers, they have various means of training. And the control group, didn't have simulation. When these new gynecologists, went in to the operating room to do their first surgery, the study results were amazing. The group that have had simulation as part of the curriculum completed the salpingectomy, which was the procedure they did, in half the time of the control group. And in blindfolded scoring by experienced surgeons, it showed that they had an equivalent experience of someone who already done 30 to 50 prior procedures. So in essence, there was a transference of skills from the simulator to the OR. And that means everything for the patient. I mean, you want to cut away the early part of the learning curve from the patient to the simulator. I mean, who wants to be the first, 10 patients when the surgeon is still learning? Nobody. And you also save a lot of money from having less time in the OR. And all these studies provides a lot of credibility to us as a simulation provider. And that in terms is very important then for our med device customers.
Great, thank you, Gisli. And just a final question before we have to end in the interest of time. COVID-19 has created a massive backlog of elective surgeries here. Is there any trends you are seeing that this might boost your near and longer term market potential in terms of getting these less invasive procedures on the path? Can you say anything about that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we do see some very encouraging things in the backwater of COVID-19, but it's very hard to draw conclusions with any certainty. I mean, look at it. COVID-19 has made many university hospitals question the fact that they still do a lot of training in the OR. Just as we have questioned why we do all these physical meetings when we can use Teams and Zoom. There is a huge backlog, which means they need more qualified surgeons and they need a bigger capacity. They cannot have, exactly the capacity they need to have some extra capacity for things like COVID-19. That indicates more need for simulation. And it indicates that perhaps robotic companies would sell more robots. On the other hand, you also have some hospital groups that are now having, financial troubles, especially in the US, because they have not done elective surgeries, whereas where they're making a lot of money. So will there be budgets for the investments needed, and how will that balance off with the increased need of simulation? We are not sure in the short and medium term, but we are very confident in the long term of what we're doing as a company.
Great. Thank you for that, Gisli. We have to cut it short here. Thank you very much for participating today. Wish you best of luck.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.